most important thing is if you have a story, make sure it's in tomorrow's paper.
He is the man.
If I get beat on a story, it drives me nuts.
Will Sid Hartman ever get married again?
No.
Why?
Sid Hartman's going to spend his time with his grandkids and his family the rest of my life.
But what if you meet the right one?
There's nobody that desperate.
He's got too many other things to do.
Must have ate about 4 quarts of ice cream.
He is philosophical.
Lose the battles and win the wars.
He is concerned.
I'm happy for the people in St. Paul.
He is aware.
I've got a lot of guys shooting at me.
He knows what people think.
68% love me, 32% hate me.
And he knows this.
Nobody could have a better life than I've had.
How do you begin to summarize the life and career of Sid Hartman? You don't do it in a half hour, but we're going to give it a shot. We spoke to over 30 different people, some famous friends, some stories you have not heard before about the legend, Sid Hartman. We start by looking back at his career, a career that probably by today's standards in society should never have occurred.
I never graduated high school. I quit at 11th grade, tried night school for a while, and then decided I didn't want to do that.
Oh, he might not have graduated from high school, but he sure got an education. Sid Hartman's legacy was not based on a silver spoon. He grew up in the 20s with 2 immigrant parents.
My old man was tougher than heck. If you got out of line with my old man, he'd take his belt off and he'd whip your rear end.
What Sid did to merit it, we don't know for sure. His mother offset his dad's demeanor.
She came over from Latvia, and she ran a dress store on what is now Olson Highway. And it was heartbreak many times, because about 3 times they broke in and stole all their dresses and stuff like that.
And it was the newspaper that became his life before he became a columnist. He was a carrier, and he worked downtown Minneapolis, hard.
I used to get up 4 o'clock in the morning every day to do that news run in the morning, ride my bike in the morning to school, then downtown to sell papers, and then go to Hebrew school from 6:45 to 7 o'clock.
That's where the work ethic started. Never give in, never give up. He didn't realize he was grooming himself for a career as a reporter, but he was developing the skill set, and a manager named Dick Cullum took note.
He hired me, $11.50 a week, $23 every 2 weeks in 1945. Eventually, have a column. The Times folded. Charlie Johnson called me right away and says, "You got a job over here at Full-Time Sports."
And he's the battery for that team, and he got it done.
He sometimes becomes the center of attention.
How you doing, Sid? Just walk in front of everybody's shot and just put your joint up there.
And he's never let up. It's been a simple philosophy. Make the rounds and visit the newsmakers every day. Build relationships by building trust. Hartman developed another signature move. If he wrote about you, he wrote to you.
If somebody does me a favor, I drop them notes. I thank them for it.
It's interesting, Sid knows instinctively the 2 things that athletes like to hear. You're the greatest, or you got robbed. One of the 2. Every one of these notes for 15 years is, boy, did you get robbed, or you're the greatest. But most of them, you're the greatest and you got robbed. So he's a master of intuition on what makes athletes tick.
Royce understands the man, has since he started as an intern at the newspaper in the 60s, and tried at least one day to skip work.
I decided it was more important to be at a pasture beer party than at work. Sid somehow tracked me down, got a hold of the farmer out in the middle of nowhere, had the farmer come out and tell me to get to work. And I've called in sick about 3 days in the 44 years since then.
Hartman was tenacious. The scoop became his motivation, and he'd do anything to get it, even if it meant waking a legendary football coach like Woody Hayes from a deep sleep.
I called up Woody Hayes one morning for a sports hero. They just won the Rose Bowl. He picks up the phone at 7 o'clock in the morning and he says, "What do you want?" said Hartman.
Or a reporter's observation of Sid trying to beat the press to a basketball coach.
And then he sees this blur racing past them in a full sprint with a 45-pound tape recorder under his hands. Sid at 82 then, or whatever it is, leaving us all in his dust as he's as he thinks there's a possibility to get a Krzyzewski soundbite before anyone else.
Today's Sports Hero caught
He took the same approach to the radio airwaves at WCCO.
I just think there's a different camaraderie, whatever that word is.
Entertaining without even realizing it.
I'm going to write a book, How to Screw Up English.
How can it not be fun working with a guy who tells you one morning when you turn on the mics and you ask him about a sports question, he says, wait a minute. Last night I saw the greatest entertainer I've ever seen in my whole life. Engelprick Humperpink. And he's serious.
What else, you genius?
You gave an intern $5 to buy him a can of pop.
What's wrong with that, you stiff?
$5, I can buy a can of pop for 50 cents.
Yeah, but these are hospital prices.
It's just so much fun to listen to Eric Escala play Sid like a fiddle. It's just, what Eric does is he gives Sid just enough rope to hang himself, and most mornings he does.
What is that saying? The shortest distance between two lines is what?
The one thing I think about Sid, and when you talk to advertisers, you talk to listeners, you know, anyone who listens to WCCO, the first question they ask is, tell me about Sid. And if you bring Sid's name up in a conversation, whoever you're talking to automatically smiles.
Cheap jerk.
But not every colleague is a close personal friend. Mike Lynch and Hartman have had, well, a cool relationship. Why have you two never been on the same page?
Well, I think it was probably the day he said the Twins were going to move down to Tampa in 1985, and I basically told him what I thought. And then he went after me, and I went after him. Then, of course, he uses my weight right away, and I just tell him that the only thing fatter in my stomach is his head. And it just deteriorated from there.
So full of crap. You don't know what you're talking about, genius.
But his Sunday morning sports huddle grew into something even Hartman did not expect.
You're listening to the 25th anniversary live broadcast Sports Huddle, Sid and Dave.
With Dave Mona as co-host, the show became a part of the fabric of Minnesota sports.
It's hard to imagine. It was only 25 minutes long back in 1981, and it had to end by 10:30 because the one thing this station didn't want to change was the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. So, I mean, who can explain how a 25-minute show on Sunday morning would become so popular?
It flourished as a Sunday morning must-listen.
We went to the Copenhagen Copacabana.
And Sid's intriguing personality brought people into the radio station.
People want to know, what is he really like? And he has this persona that he's this mean, crusty, uncaring.
I never said Redmond Combs would.
The Sunday Night Roundtable, the sports show, offers some of the same.
Don't you make up any lies like you normally do.
I think he's been a little distracting. We have moments where he's not real happy with me being 6 minutes late every week, and he lets me know. But I think that'll pass.
But Sid Hartman is one of the few that can step in anywhere and leave anywhere, anytime.
Am I that bad? I got an ego too, Sid.
He's become a good friend. He's come to my kids' graduations. He has gone to, believe it or not, as much as he berates hockey parents, he's come to my son's hockey game with me and enjoyed himself, although he'll never tell anybody that. There is a great friendship behind the microphone.
I just think there's a different camaraderie, whatever that word is. Yeah.
What were we talking about? What are we talking about now?
Sid Hartman was not just reporting the sports news in the 1940s and 50s, he was part of it. Helping run the Minneapolis Lakers. They were the best in the league. And a young Hartman was helping make deals, including one that caught League Commissioner Morris Pavlov off guard.
He got up, he says, we got to worry what we pay these players. He says, Jim Pollard out there, he's trying to get a ton of money. And I'm suggesting nobody sign him. And I got up, none of those guys didn't know me. I said, Mr. Potoff, we have signed Mr. Pollard. You could hear a pin drop in the room.
The league was finding out what Minnesota was finding out. This was one unique man. And his competitive nature had no bounds. The Lakers became the champions again and again and again. And Hartman was in the middle of it.
Well, he ran the Lakers. The paper they didn't want him dabbing with professional sports and working at the paper. Not that he made a lot at the paper, not that any of us made a lot of money in those days, but he actually ran the Lakers.
They were the best, and Sid developed a simple belief as to why. If you want to win in any sport, you need one thing, and the Lakers had it.
We had the two best players in the league, and Mike and Pollard. We won the championship one year in the 50s, and I went out and drafted 3 players who started the next year. Slater Martin, Vern Mickelson, and Bob Harrison.
Drive with Sid Hartman on a trip when he's checking the messages on his speakerphone, and you get an idea of who he talks to on a regular basis.
Mr. Poland's looking for you. I'm going to try the other number.
At one time,
Sid's endurance make him an icon to many.
Sid's a Renaissance person. I mean, look at his career, it's amazing. He's gone from paperboy to running a sports team, as he said, not graduating from school, but yet going on to an incredible journalism career. For all of his growl, underneath the growl is a big heart and a wonderful man who loves Minnesota, and we love him.
But it is the high-profile public figures that have a personal relationship with Sid that mean much. Bud Grant and Sid met at the University of Minnesota when Grant arrived to play football. An athlete and outdoorsman from Superior, Wisconsin, it hardly seemed they would become friends.
Sometimes you're friends in spite of. I'm sure I do things that offend Sid or Sid doesn't understand. He does things that I don't understand, and he says things that I don't agree with. But in spite of all of that, we're still good friends.
When Grant rode the parade in Canton, Ohio on his way to the Hall of Fame, there was Sid to introduce him.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a tremendous honor to present you one of the finest men ever to be associated with the National Football League, my very close personal friend, Bud Grant.
There is another coach that Sid has a fondness for. Lou Holtz and Sid became close during Lou's 2-year tour at the University of Minnesota. When Hartman penned his first book, there was Holtz, on hand to lend a hand.
It takes a special guy to get me to come up here for one night just to be able to honor him. Sid's a special guy, not because of what he writes or what he says, but just if you get to know Sid, he's a very, very caring person and a true friend.
Oh, he's been friendly with Yankee owner George Steinbrenner since Steinbrenner was a Big Ten assistant coach and came to town scouting the Gophers. And of course, there is Bobby Knight.
The first time I ever met him, I said, here's a guy that's just honest. Here's a guy that you can trust. And I've talked to Sid about things over the years that I know would be very good for him to write about that he's never written about.
He's the salt of the earth. I mean, but as a person, as a basketball coach, nobody like him.
There is not one of Sid's allies that is not above pulling a prank on the veteran reporter. There was the day Bert Blyleven thought it was funny to send some fireworks his way.
How's that? Sid?
You know, that Dark Star is a real smart son of a gun, isn't he?
And those famous Viking Super Bowl teams had some yucks at Sid's expense.
Tarkin would say, when Sid comes on the field, he'd walk right in the field, almost in the huddle, and they'd say, nobody talk to Sid. No one say a word to Sid. And finally, after about 10 minutes of no one talking to him, he'd like blow his stack. Sid loved it when he put in the old towel hamper and rolled down the old hallway at Metropolitan Stadium. I'm not saying I did that, but that did happen.
Sid's personality lends itself to a good gotcha from time to time. It was also because he was almost part of the group he covered.
He was like one of the guys. We would joke with him and have fun with him, and we all had great respect for him.
And sometimes even teammates have to take issue. Like when he approached a Viking after a game and he was trying to talk to his family, and then Sid arrived.
Sid walks up and sticks the microphone in my face and says, Wally, tell me about the play you made today. And I said, Sid, I'm with my friends from home. I'll catch you in a little bit. And he said, oh, tell me, just real quick. And I looked over and I saw a couple policemen over there. And I said, officer, get this guy. He just propositioned me. And the two cops come and grab Sid Hartman, and they're dragging him off. And a couple of the assistant coaches had to retrieve him, save him, or he'd have been gone.
His reputation is national because so many people came through here on their way to somewhere else.
When you have Sid Hartman as a friend, you have a friend for life. You have somebody that's going to back you and support you and be in your corner no matter what happens. And I think that's the thing I admire most about Sid.
Pete Carroll was a Viking assistant in the middle of his coaching journey. We caught up to him as the head coach at USC, and he can't forget Hartman.
You could hear him coming down the halls. You knew when he arrived, here comes Sid, and he'd always give somebody some trash about something, and we give it right back to him, and just part of the fabric of that sports community, love him or hate him. Well, he was a great one.
Even sit down with UCLA legend John Wooden, and he can recall his dealings with Sidney.
Sid was a little different, but I enjoyed visiting with him. He had a good sense of humor, and I enjoyed it.
At the end of the day, what makes him endearing to many is he cares about the people around him, and he respects them.
Whatever we talked about, he never, ever reported. He never said Bud said, or he never would say anonymously where you know where it would come from. He never ever puts you on the spot, and he does that with other people, not just me.
Well, that's not always quite true. Remember the day you and I sat with Sid Hartman, and we talked all in all about a private meeting that you had had. We had this long off-the-record conversation, and I walked away from there thinking that's very interesting. It was even more interesting the next day when I woke up and saw it in the headlines of the paper. You remember that?
I do, yes.
What was your reaction?
Well, my first reaction is, I can't believe it. And my second reaction it was, oh, that's Sid. And so I think he gets an extra measure of grace and latitude because he's Sid.
My love life is not very good. They jump up and down like a bunch of jerks. Come on, grow up. Don't ask questions like that.
Tonight's theme, most appropriately, is close personal friends.
There was a banquet held honoring Sid. It was quite a night. A who's who of sports names on hand to honor Sid in August of 2005.
I mean, Sid's just a super supporter of the Minnesota athlete, the Minnesota teams, and Sid's fantastic.
His friends on hand, a video tribute to his life and his bigger love than his job, his family.
Well, when I first met Sid Hartman was back in 1959, which was a long time ago, and Sid was almost a young man. He was introduced to me by John Mariucci, and John was telling me what an influential and knowledgeable and powerful newspaper man he was.
I remember in the locker room, there's a lot of football players, there was a lot of people. I didn't know anybody. And I saw this guy, and I thought that, you know, I wonder if this guy is trying out as a flanker or defensive back. And I looked again, and I thought, you know, he looks a little wimpy for a football player. Then I realized later on it was Sid Hartman.
As much as he wants to see the Wolves succeed, the Twins succeed, the Vikings and Wild all have success, all of that pales to what he likes to see here at the University of Minnesota.
And these people who second guess him don't know what they're talking about. All these jerks out there who don't know what they're talking about.
I can think back to when I was playing Little League, and like all kids, you have some good and bad days. And so you want to get a little bit of help. Maybe you want to play catch in the backyard with your father. Here's how my father tried to help me out with Little League. He brought Rod Carew. That's how Sid would do it. You know, my father with our family is, he's spectacular. And it really shows itself most with his grandkids.
What most people don't see is his personal side. You know, everybody sees him, you know, how he works and obviously voicing his own opinion. But what people don't see is what he's like when you go home and the media is not around, and he's a really genuine guy. You know, people don't see his family side.
Come on up here, Sid.
It was quite a night. Broadcast on WCCO radio, one of the entertaining sidebars was hearing from people on the first time they met Sid. People like Glenn Taylor.
Sat down, had the longest conversation, just shared information. And, you know, Sid, he wants the background. Yep. And after that day, I found out I was his one of his new best friends.
And former Gopher football great Bobby Bell.
And I've never been on a plane before. In the first 5 or 6 days, I was looking up at the tall buildings. And Sid just said, "Oh, you can't play." He turned around and walked away from it.
Kevin McHale was just in high school.
We were down at the state tournament, and he came barging in the room bigger than life, and I need to talk to somebody from this team. And that was the first time I met him, and I guess they threw me at him, and that was 1974.
The commissioner of Major League Baseball and many others flew in to toast him.
Sid, I want to tell you, I have never seen anybody with so many close personal friends. And I have to admit, I'm impressed.
Who's the guy that calls you when you're down? Who's the guy that's there whether things are going well or things are going poorly? It's Sid Hartman.
The closest friend I had probably from here is you.
It raised money for the University of Minnesota Athletic Department. And as usual, Sid was keeping tabs for the record.
$600,000 we raised at an event that is sitting at the University of Minnesota drawing interest and will be matched someday. There'll be Sid Hartman scholarships for underprivileged athletes at the University of Minnesota.
It was a fitting tribute to the life of Sid Hartman in a nutshell.
You know, there's ups and downs along the way, whether as an athlete or in your personal life, and he's just always been there.
None of us will forget when Sid Hartman confused figure skater Tara Lipinski for White House intern Monica Lewinsky.
Lipinski? Quam?
Bobik, who do you like?
Who do you like, Sid? Talked to
That's his department.
Don't you have some opinions on it?
I have some. All I know is that Mr. Clinton's ratings keep on going up, so maybe you ought to find some other
Lewinsky!
Sid,
Lipinski, the skater!
She's an ice skater, Sid.
Oh, I thought Lipinski, the skater!
I thought.
I want to interrupt this right now.
Is this the biggest you've ever met?
Are we rolling? Yes, it is.
Without a doubt.
There really is no way to describe or explain Sid Hartman to someone that doesn't know Sid Hartman. But I'll say this. I've been lucky and blessed for the time that I've been allotted with my close personal friend, Sid Hartman. As we say goodbye, how about a succinct description of Sid Hartman by one of his close personal friends?
Because there is nobody that I've met during the now 40 years that I've been in sports that I respect more, admire more, like better, or would count on more than Sid Hartman. You are a tink, Sid. There is nobody comparable. Thank you.